Welcome everyone to this special masterclass. Today we're talking about winning CanExport, and we've got a facilitator here with us who has been there, done it, and has secured over $25,000 for herself. And she's here to tell us how she did that and how we can do that too. So today, I'm very happy to introduce Bukky Wonda. Bukky Wonda is the founder, strategist, and immigrant tech innovator for Shirah Technologies. She's the CEO also. She has built groundbreaking product like Sedulous, which has helped over 1,000 students migrate to Canada. And now she's got the Employ Now, a matching business with top tier matching students with top-tier foreign talent. With our proven track record in securing non-dilutive funding, Bukky has successfully raised over 300,000, including the CanExport Grant, to support our business expansion into new markets abroad. Having navigated the complex world of grants, business growth, and international hiring, she's now here helping other entrepreneurs position themselves for success. In today's masterclass, Bukky Wonda will be sharing with us real-world strategies, common pitfalls, and the lessons she learned from securing funding and scaling a global business. If you're looking to expand internationally, to tap into new markets, or to master the CanExport process, today's masterclass from Bukky Wonda will give you the exact insight that will give you that competitive edge. Bukky, you're welcome. Please take over the masterclass.
Hi, everybody. Lovely to connect. Thank you so much, Ejibola, for having me, and thank you so much for that warm introduction. So I'm just going to share my screen. And as Ejibola said, I am the founder of Shirah, and my journey into business started in 2018. And, I started as a side hustle. And then in 2020 was when I went into full-time business. And again, there's so much to navigate when it comes to running a business. A lot of you are amazing business owners. So whether you're in retail, whether you're in services, I'm in quote technology service. And if it can be useful for me, it's even much more, especially useful for those who are in retail. And so, and then, again, whether you're looking to funding to enter into international markets. So what you can expect, we're going to go through this. And the reason why I felt this was important to even do right now is because these applications, they do close fast. I would leave room obviously for questions at the very end, but please feel free to stop me if you have a questions, drop it in the comment. I won't be able to see a comment because I'm just looking at my screen. Right now, I can't see the participants. So maybe use the button to raise your hands or drop your question in the comment. Again, feel free to interrupt me as I go along, especially if it's something that's crucial that you don't want to forget, and we can go. But before I get started, again, I can't see people's screen right now, but I would love to know, but I'll come back to the screen to see later on, which industry are you? Are you a service-based business or are you a product-based business? This will kind of help me to know, especially when I'm answering questions, to know how to tailor my answers and my responses to you to make sure that it is relevant to you. And can everybody hear me? Okay, am I audible enough? Great, thank you. Okay, so Ejibola mentioned about me, so I won't go into too much details. One of the reasons last year I started grant strategy for other businesses because I did realize that there was a lot of misinformation. My own journey kind of proved that. I remembered I found out about grants or something that you could apply for in 2022, there were options of companies that you could work with that could write your grant for you at no cost, which is great. And for big businesses, they would make sense. For small businesses like myself, it would not make sense. I don't know about how big your business is, but at the time it didn't make sense because for big businesses, they had somebody that was just dedicated and knew it. So when you have a company like that would just take a percentage after you get successful, it makes sense. So, but then if it's a small company, they don't take the time to actually learn your business. So I missed out on a lot of opportunities. Applications were not done properly. And then that's when I now started to figure things out by myself, and then met another entrepreneur who was like, oh, have you seeing this company that could do this? And that's where the whole journey of, oh, there's a CanExport grant that you could apply for. And that's how all of those things. And with the kind of businesses that I run Employ Now. So Employ Now are products, and students are products of Shirah. So Shirah is a technology company, and we build innovative products in the immigration space. Our business is automatically within that space whereby people, it's natural that we already bring in people from overseas. Employ Now, is two-faced. We help employers here hire remote workers that remain remote. And then we also help employers, especially in the skilled trades and in tech, to bring specialized skills into Canada. So in those spaces, it just helps you where it's like, okay, I want to expand my business, especially on the student side of things. Or for Employ Now, as we grow, we've not done that because Employ Now is our latest product. And as we grow and as we want to expand to like US will be our market that we want to expand to for Employ Now, then this CanExport becomes relevant. And I'll begin to show that to you as we again go along. Please put up your hands. I can hear the voice or the sound when you put up your hand or you make a comment so that I can stop. So what we'll be learning again, how I got my own 27,500, key factors that can make or break your CanExport, common mistakes that can lead to rejection, and how to avoid them. And, again, you can access a free 15-minute one-on-one strategy session with me complimentary. So what is CanExport? So CanExport is Canada or Canadian export. It allows you to export to any part of the world, with the exception of sanctioned countries. I would say North Korea. I think there are 2 other countries or so that are in there. It's a government program that is funded again to design to help small businesses. One of the reasons why I love this program is this program is for people that earn at least $100,000 to 100 million. But I was so shocked because at first when I looked at it, I'm like, if someone that can, get 100 million is applying to this, what are my chances? But I applied for, and one of the hack to going into this is, again, so, okay, before I get into that, but that was the one thing that really kind of threw me off at first, because I'm like, there's no way someone like me, who I think at the time we had just crossed over maybe $200,000 in revenue. I was like, there's no way company like me with somebody that's competing with 100 million can actually compete. But that's not true. Whether you make 100,000 or you make 100 million, it's the quality of your application that determines whether you get this funding. And the best part of this is, as long as you can show growth in your company, you would always be able to qualify for this funding. Now, again, it supports you into new markets. So, and then it gives you up to 50%. So every grant that you will find in Canada, and again, I've applied to probably at least 6-7 program grants in Canada, which I've received, they're all contributory, which means that you must always put up your own money, and then the government will give you the remaining money. So, any high growth, so regions, people can say, okay, can they support to go to Africa? If that's your target market, yes, I'm proof of that. Obviously, other markets have it easier than if you're trying to go to Africa. But that doesn't mean you still cannot go to a place like Africa, because I have proven it. That's where my primary market is right now. And that's where I'm going to be going for the next 5 years. So what are the key features of this? Again, funding covers 50% and you and up to $50,000. Whenever you are applying for a funding from CanExport, it's important that you apply for the maximum. Because when I applied for the full $100,000 because the budget is like you do your budget, there are buckets for each one of the budgets, and then you want to make sure that you apply for the full 100,000, saying, I need $50,000 from you, I have 50,000. The reason being that just because you applied for the full amount doesn't mean they're going to give it to you. So because there's the possibility that they don't give you the full amount, it's important that you apply for it so that if they do cut your funding, you are still. So I applied for $50,000 from them. They gave me $27,500, more than half of it. So which is still a very good win. So it's always important that even though the funding covers up to 50K, don't just say, oh, I only need $20,000. I'm only going to, because let's say they approve you for certain funding and you don't need it, you can always choose not to spend the money, or you can choose to go at, because when they do approve you, like you can always go on your trip twice in a year or something, as long as you spend the money within the calendar period. So government's end of the year is March 31st every year. So we just ended the government's year. So you must fully spend your money by March 31st. If not, you lose it. Obviously, you don't want to ever lose any government funding because they won't give it back to you again. Now, what are the eligible activities when you're trying to go into? So for a lot of people, so can I get a number? How many people are in product, specifically product? I'm going to X out of here so I can see how many people are in product. See, can I see the chat? Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, 6 people are in product. Okay, great. So if you're in product, I feel like product people can actually sell themselves better than we that are not in product. Services like us, so that are not in product. So if you're looking at eligible activities that you want to go into, places and things that they fund are trade shows. So a lot of you guys want to probably take your, I know somebody here, Bra Girl, my namesake, hi. You want to take maybe you want to go showcase like your work at maybe a trade show for maybe lingerie. I'm just using that as an example. And if you're going into a trade show like that, government can actually give you money through the CanExport. They will give you 50%. So they would also pay for your booth. Let's say there's an exhibition that you need to do and you need to buy a booth for $10,000. Guess what? If you apply for it, they will give you $5,000. They will approve the 10,000. You put in 5,000 and they give you $5,000. Beyond that, product promotion is also covered. But there are nuances to product promotion because product promotion comes under like marketing. So, and I didn't know this until I actually, because what they do is they'll apply, you give them like an estimate. The good thing I love about this grant is you're not expected, I did not have any, I had certain quotes, right? But none of those quotes that I actually had was what I used eventually in my trip. Because as a small business, you don't have maybe the luxury of doing a very deep research because a deep research will require money. So because you don't have the ability to do that deep research, you just need to have an idea. Of course, get as many quotes. They don't ask for documentation when you're submitting. Typically, when you submit, there's no room for documentation. It's literally a form where you put in all your information. You will do it on a Word document and then you copy and paste. So they can obviously come back and say, can you provide this documentation? So you must have it, but they don't ask for it. So this gives you flexibility to say, okay, even if I don't have everything figured out, when they give me the money and I know for sure I am going, I can now do this. And the best thing, and one of the things that also I love about the CanExport is just the fact that when I actually submit, so let's say you submit April 30th, and the program you need to go for is May 1st. The fact that you submitted April 30th, you are eligible for that program that you're going for, even if you have not been approved yet. It is based on when you submit and not when you get an approval. Again, the only downside to that is, let's say you applied for the 100K funding and you really needed the entire 50K from them, and maybe they approved you for 40K. It means that you would have to spend that extra 10K extra from your pocket because they won't give that to you, but they would approve every expense that you made from May 1st because you submitted on April 30th. Because this program is it's quality application. And then if once they approve your application, once they see that you met all the requirements, it is a first come, first serve application. Now, of course, there's still high competition. It requires a strong, prepared application. Last year, it closed, I think, even 2 weeks earlier. I applied in 2023 and I used the money last year. In 2023, when I applied, immediately opened on March 1st. It took me about 4 to 6 weeks to put my application together. Immediately, we submitted a week after it closed. Immediately I submitted, I think, first week or so in May, even though the program, because they had reached capacity, because they tally up the money based on what people have requested for. Of course, bigger businesses, if they ask for 50K, they will get the full 50K. I'm confident that if I go back now, because between when we applied and now, our team has grown. At the time, I also did not have any Canadian staff when I applied. So because obviously they want to see that this money is going to help you grow, make more money. Now we have 4 people. So now if we go, because there's been a track record of growth in the company, if we go back now, they'll most likely say, okay, yeah, you should be able to collect the 50K because you've shown growth. So it's very competitive. So again, just know that you don't have to have everything. You need to have an idea of what this needs to look like. And then, so for me, personally, my own strategy to win the grant was I did have a grant writer, on board when I was doing this. I don't write my grants myself just because of how much work, not because I can't, but because of how much work it takes. So I'd rather have a grant writer that is focused on this, and then I provide the input and I review the applications as it goes along. So one of the things was to target the market. So again, because it was my very first time, I was over ambitious. I was like, I'm going to go to 5 African countries. My initial list was South Africa, Zimbabwe, because Zimbabwe and South Africa are very close to each other. It's just like Nigeria and Ghana, Kenya, Ghana, and I can't remember the 5th country, but man, I quickly realized by the time we got approved, and we got approved for the 5 countries, but I quickly realized that even though I got approved for the 5 countries, it was not feasible for me to go, because when I literally broke down what it would cost to go into each market, I had to reduce it to 2. So now I'm not even doing 2. If I'm ever going back to any country, it will be 1 country. Now, what they do when they also apply and they give you money is you can go, you have up to a maximum of 30 business days for you to be able to claim. Why is that important? Because they give you a per diem. So they don't just focus, they pay for everything as part, they take care of everything as part of your trip, including your flight ticket, including your hotel. Your hotel food is in a per diem. Your per diem is $400 per day, but they only cover up to 30 days. That's why I said you can break your trip into 2, 3, 4, as long as you do not go past the 30 days. So you might say, okay, I want to go to 5 countries, but you can break them down into 5 trips. Or you can say, I want to go to 5 countries, but you can break them down into 2 trips. Or you can say, I want to just go to 1 country, but you can only go once. You can't go to the same country twice within that period. So, but you can also go to 1 country and go for the entire 30 days. But here's the catch. You cannot claim money for a day that you're not working on the business. So every single day, because you must account for every single day when you're reporting, because one thing that you need to know is for you to get your money back, they are not going to give you the money upfront. Even if when you're approved, they are going to require you to go and spend the money, and then you now get reimbursed for the money after. So this is where, if you don't have cash flow, line of credit can play a difference or help in this case. If obviously you're going to a place like North America, like US, that it's easier to just use your card, it might make sense. If you're going to a place cash economies, then having cash would actually be the most ideal thing. So you have to figure out how you're going, but you also don't wait until when you're done with your trip. As soon as you book your flight, and you do those preliminary expenses. For instance, for me, once I booked my flight, I also did my business plan. They also cover things like business plan. As soon as I booked my flight, did my business plan, I think I'd gone in about $10,000 plus. I immediately filed. So before I even traveled, I was able to get money back. So that's how you begin to pull money back, pull money back, pull money back until you now you're allowed, I believe, 4 or 5 maximum claims during your period. So it's just important that you think through how you want to claim the money, especially if you're going to do multiple trips, within the period of the eligibility of your grant. Again, keep in mind that you can only maximum 30 days. So what happens if you're going for more than 30 days? It just means that the period within that 30 days, your per diem is not covered. That's just the difference. And days that you're not doing anything for your business is also not covered. So if I'm going to, let's say in my own case now, I had maybe some down days, like the day you travel, for instance, the day you're coming back, those are days that you're not working on your business. So automatically they don't give you a per diem on those days. I don't like that. Feels like, but I'm traveling, it's still for my business, but they just don't give you a per diem. So it's just important for you to know that I'm not going to get a per diem for this. Also, for those of you who have staff, you can actually go with 1 team member or maximum 2 team members from your company to go along with you. So let's say you're going to a trade show, you're going to have a booth, you can go with 2 team members, provided they are going to live from Canada and they work from Canada. They are Canadian staff. They can be contract, they can be part-time, as long as they're on payroll as part of your company and they're going to live from Canada with you for the show. You guys can have different tickets. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. Just coming from your company, then they are also allowed to go with you from this. So I feel like, especially you product based companies, that you need to showcase, you need to go to markets, you need to go and meet with maybe maybe where you want to product placement and things like that. This is going to be. So again, you have to be focused on a region with strong demand. Strong demand here is not for the region, it's more for your business. If I'm going to, for me, I could show that the reason why I'm going to Kenya, Zimbabwe, they had a strong demand for my product, for what I was selling. So strong demand is not the region itself, because if you're going to the US, if you cannot justify why the US is a strong demand for your product, you would not get approved. So it's important that that is there. Again, this ties back into having a clear business case, showcasing how the funding, because they're going to ask you, what is the results that you're going to have post funding, right? What revenue are you expected to generate? And it must make sense. You can't say, okay, I'm going to collect 100,000 and then I'm going to collect it and nothing is going to happen to my business, or my business is going to make less money. If your business is making, because the minimum you have to make from this is you must have made at least $100,000 as a business to be able to qualify. And so it's like, okay, you need to be able to show that, okay, on an incremental level, in year 2, in year 3, in year 4, in year 5, these are the amounts that I'm going to have progressively, because this funding is going to change my life. And one thing that you also need, don't cramp all the trip that you need to do in 1 year. If you know that, okay, this trip is also my discovery trip, I don't know how it's going to go, you can always apply the next year. I wish I knew that, but I was just like, I wanted to make, so just use one trip as a test case. And for those of you, I think most people are from Alberta. For those of you who are from Alberta, Alberta also has one. They used to give up to $15,000, but they just changed it recently. They changed it, I think, last year. Now they give you $4,000 4 times a year. So let's say now, but the way they are $4,000 a year is structured is a bit all over the place. You need to, I think when I did the math, I've never applied for that one, because again, when actually it was $25,000 before. When I was going in 2023, it was there. And even early last year, it was there. It just recently that they changed it to $4,000. You could get up to $25,000. So if it was in a case of where you had, because you could stack that money with the CanExport, but the maximum that you can stack is 75%. So let's say your budget is $100,000, you can only stack 75%, which is $75,000. So you still must have $25,000 of your own money in the trip. Now, with the way Alberta has done this now, they're now giving $4,000 over a period. I think when I did the math and how you can maximize it, you have to have spent $16,000. So if you're doing CanExport, that's very easy. So if you're also breaking your trip into two, so let's say you're breaking your trip and saying, okay, maybe I'm going to go to the US now, and maybe I need to go to Mexico, for instance, as another part of my trip, then you can use on the first trip to US, you take your CanExport money, take the money from Alberta to supplement that. When you go to Mexico in the next year, you also do the same. So that will be, I would say, how you can do it. Again, think about strategic, places that you know that make sense. And even if it's a new market discovery, the worst case is they're not going to penalize you because you did not make money. It's just because part of what you can also say is this business was not, even though you've done your research, it was not, they will not penalize you for not, because it's like, it's part of it. You just don't want to expand into a market and discover that you've just wasted money. Part of also one of the things that this thing can cover is legal fees. Do you need to pay legal fees, right, in the country that you're going to, right? Do you need to start a patent, IP protection? For those of you who have products, right, that is your idea and you need to protect it, they'll pay for IP, a legal in Canada and overseas. They'll pay for either one of them, right? So if you need a legal person here, you need a legal person in the country you're going to make sure that your ideas, everything, agreements, all the agreements, like I mentioned, they paid for business plan, not business plan, the one that you take to the bank to get money, but like a business expansion plan, which is still the same thing. So there are ways to use this money in a way that still benefits your business, in costs that you were going to make before. That's the good thing about this grant. And then again, to strategic budgeting, ensure that all expenses were eligible and justified, right? Every expense that I made, there were some expenses, again, I learned the hard way that they do not accept. So for instance, one of the expense that we had was like it wasn't an influencer marketing. I can't even remember how we called that on the invoice, but then they came back and they said influencer marketing was not covered. So if you're going, for instance, now and you have a website, they're not going to cover you to build a new website because it's not for doing your business, is for market expansion into. So if you said, okay, I want to build a website specifically for the US market because I'm entering into the US market, right? And I want to build this landing page that is not, so that it's not the same as what the Canadians will see. It's different for what the Americans will see. They'll pay for that. But if you just say, I just want to build a website, they're not going to pay for that because that's like a usual business expense. It's not a business expansion expense. So there are just nuances to some of these buckets that it's important that you know. If not, they will not. So I had to legal business expenses that we got. So also make sure that you have the proper documentation, because without proper documentation, even though you were approved for, you are not going to get your money. Your flight ticket, that one is very easy. The airline is going to give you a receipt. You're going to be able to take that, put it there. Per diem, you don't need to show any receipts for per diem because but you must show the activities, and they might ask you for documentations for the activities to show that the itinerary, they're going to ask you for your itinerary. So if you say, okay, I'm going for, in my case, because we did, what's it called now? We didn't do a program, but we did, what was I going to say? But in my own case, because we had certain things, we were able to go, sorry, I lost my train of thoughts, but proper documentation, make sure that every single expense. So in the case, because we went to Africa, there were so many expenses that were cash that we had to pay. Right. And those cash expenses, unfortunately, I did not know this. And there's no way that you can read this thing. The winter is when you are submitting that you now realize you can't, because they want money to go from your bank account in Canada. They want to see that this money went out from Shirah in Canada to this vendor that you said you worked with, or to this event that you said you work with. So I always say, if you're going to like maybe a place like that is not advanced and you need to do business and you know you're going to need cash there, the best option for you is to put money into like a card, right? A card that you can spend and just show that you transfer that money into that card and you paid for these expenses. It is a place that you absolutely must use cash. Look for a business there that you can transfer the money to, so that there's a trail. They just need a paper trail to show that this money was not, and you just have an agreement with that person that they're acting as your liaison in that local market for some of the local expenses that you're going to have, and you'll be fine, you'll be protected. So just make sure there are proper documentations, your itinerary is solid, and all of that, and you'll be fine. And then I think I've kind of talked about what expenses are covered. Website localization, business travel, trade show participation, booth, market research and consulting fees. Please take advantage of that. This market research consulting fees, you can take advantage of it because these are legal expenses. This is also where business plan will fall into. If you have a business plan, and you can do a multi-purpose business plan that is not just for your expansion plan, but it also becomes a two-edge, especially if you need one, for whatever, if you're looking for funding and things like that. This can be something that you could talk to the business strategist that you're working with to make sure that that is covered. So things like you organizing your own event would not be covered. They don't cover because it's expected that you're going to expand into a market. So you're tapping into an already existing ecosystem. That's the way they say it. So if, let's say, you are like, the only way for me to do this is to actually do my own business, why don't you find a business that can actually do it, where they have the capacity, and then choose to sponsor or choose to just have a booth and a sponsorship? There are ways and strategic ways, which I cannot probably mention on this call because it's being recorded, right? That you can always make sure, and you're still staying within the bounds of the law, to make sure that you can do things like this and still get the benefit that you need to get out of something like this. And so here are some of the common mistakes, again, that could get your business rejected. So if you're going into a market that you've made over $100,000, because again, if you've made over $100,000 in one market, it's expected that you already know how to figure it out. If you've made less than $100,000, you can still justify that, in fact, this is the reason why I need to go. But once you've made $100,000 and above, you will not get money for that market. Not properly documenting the budget, this could lead to you being rejected. Submitting an incomplete or just vague, or just saying, oh, I just want to go. No, you must detail out, why am I doing this? Also, in the place where you talk about yourself, who are you? What is your credential? Why are you qualified to run this business? Your bio is not just something that is just for LinkedIn. In applications like this, you need to, if possible, overbloat yourself, not lie, but overbloat yourself, because those things really do matter. Applying with multiple businesses. For someone like me, I have 4 businesses. And so if you're applying with multiple businesses, they will always ask you, there's a question they ask you that, do you have other sister companies? And you must say yes if you do. And you must list related sister companies. Only 3 of my businesses are connected, and you must list those 2. Because why? At that time, there were 2. Now there are 3. So if I'm going back and I'm applying this year again, if I'm going back and I have to list the 2, because what is going to happen is, if I use any of the other ones to apply, the entire, I can't remember the exact amount, but there's an aggregate amount that I cannot get above in all 3 companies. That's the reason why they ask for the sister company, because they know a lot of companies have sister companies or subsidiaries. So as long as you own the business, even if it's not 100%, if you have a majority stake in a business, it is a sister company. And if it's obviously a subsidiary, I think you should know if your business is a subsidiary, you must disclose it so that you don't get refused. So how to ensure your application is strong? Again, submit on time, right? That's like the hack to this thing. If you submit on time, you will definitely get it. My own experience, because especially with being in an immigration business, I was just like, how possible would it be for them to fund me? But trust me, if they can fund me, they can fund any other business that is here, any other entrepreneur that is here. So again, keep your export market new, focus on regions where your revenue is under $100,000. Be strategic. You can leverage your sister companies. Let's say you even need more money than the 100K, and you know that, okay, they may possibly not approve you for everything. Now, you cannot take the same business, because the reason why you have sister companies is they're not doing exactly the same thing as what one company is doing. All of my businesses are doing slightly different things, even though they are connected, but they have different ethos, and they have different objectives, different mission, but they are still complementary. So this year, now that I'm applying with 2 of my companies, as opposed to the first time, because now I have a stronger footing with my companies. So I'm going to leverage it, but obviously I cannot say I'm going to go and do the same thing in the same countries, because that's like, I can say I'm going. So let's say I'm going. So for one of my countries, I could not go to Nigeria, even though Nigeria has a stronger market for me, because I had already made over $100,000. But one of my companies now, or 2 of my companies have not made up to $100,000 from Nigeria for my other 2 companies. Now I can go there and I can take my other services to Nigeria. So that's one of the ways to leverage that and actually go to a market I want to go to. Right. So as you also think forward into the future, right? So look at it that, okay, have I maybe exhausted what I could do with this company? Do I need to strategically start up a new company, and maybe put certain parts of this thing in here? Because some of you have like different product lines that you could say, okay, maybe this product line is focused on this. Maybe I should put it under this company so that I can actually still access this market again with this funding. So these are ways to think outside the box that is not. So I always try to say this, that this is like a matter of tax evasion and tax avoidance. Tax evasion is illegal. You can go to jail. Tax avoidance is just a smart way of being strategic, and it's the same thing with grants. Grants is about being strategic. It's about, okay, what is within the bounds of the law? What can I do? And being creative with it without lying and without putting yourself into jeopardy. And then, so I think I've kind of talked about the fact that I scaled down from the 5 countries. I eventually just went to Zimbabwe and Kenya. And now that I'm expanding more again, I'm going to be going to Nigeria, and I'll be using one of my sister companies to qualify so I can be able to go to Nigeria. Also, one of the other things is, because now I've gone to other countries, I've also expanded, even though my core business may and this is something I'm still going to have to prove. And again, you can always also book a call with the program officer. If ever unsure, they're always open, right? Just make sure you have all your questions, you've gone through them. But one question I still have in my mind now, that Nigeria is actually making less than $100,000 because of all the other new markets, would my current business I used to go, would it qualify for me to actually go to Nigeria? Those are questions that I need to even get answers to for myself. So again, I'll use definitely my sister company would qualify. And once I'm already there and I'm having meetings, I can obviously always take advantage of being there to do other things. That doesn't mean I can't do other things. Again, this is where you have to just be strategic about thinking about your business. Now, some of you are looking at it and you're just like, Bukky, this is very, very good, but I don't think I can travel maybe in the next 1 year, 2 years, maybe family obligations, business obligations, whatever that looks like. They actually fund virtual expansion as well, right? So you can pay for participation in virtual booths. So as long as any place you're going to has a virtual option, that is covered. So the same rules apply, the same 50-50, the same. You still must show how, that boost that you're paying for, you can pay for maybe extra days where you just have to be having meetings, with them, and all of that. So you just need to, again, show that this boost that you're paying for actually makes sense. Who are the people you're going to be talking to and all of that. Also, if you are not able to go as the business owner, you can send a staff of yours if you have a staff to go on your behalf. So it doesn't have to be black and white, like it doesn't have to be. Also, you can also, again, this is one of those places where you just have to be strategic. If you have a consultant that consults for your business, even though they are not necessarily a full-time staff, there are ways to put the application together that they can go on your behalf, even if it's not a staff. So these things are all possible with this. And so before I go into that, so really that's like the summary of my conversation. I'd like to go into, before I go into like, how I can support you, I want to take the time now to open it up to actually get questions from you based on everything. I hope that at least I've been able to say something, but I believe that with the questions, it can open up more dialogue for me to be able to maybe touch on areas that I did not touch on. Okay, let's go in here. All right, please go ahead, Nana. I hope I pronounced that well.
So, Bukky, we've got 2 questions in the comment section. And we've got one person raising our hand.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so let me start with the one in the comment section. So I have here really enlightening. Thanks for sharing. 2 questions. So if you're new to business and have not recorded your annual revenue to establish 100K, can you still apply? No. The CanExport is very clear that you must have made a minimum of $100,000 for you to be able to apply. You cannot choose a new business. I guess maybe their reasoning behind this might just be, you've established some level of, revenue. So you're expanding. Remember, this is for expanding. This is not just I'm starting a business. This is I've already started a business. I've already started making money, and now I want to expand to make more money for my business. Because at the end of the day, remember, government is not a charity. Government gives grant in order to benefit the economy. So they want to ensure that when they give you that money, you're going to expand by hiring people, by giving more jobs to Canadians, because those are things that government cannot do. Government cannot hire everybody. So, but by empowering small businesses and different levels of businesses, now you've expanded, you've made more money. Now you can add, even if it's part-time, now you've hired more people into your business and you're supporting the economy. So I hope that answered the question. And then I have a second question here second question is around IP protection. You said it will cover Canada as well. IP in this case for the company in general, but would it be used in these new markets I'm expanding into? Business is services, not product. Yeah, as long as, again, because when you're moving into another market, you're exposed if you have an IP. And because you're exposed, part of the CanExport expansion program is to make sure they protect you. Because there's no point in expanding and you're being exposed and your business gets overthrown because you went into a new market. So protection in that country, because the reason why I say Canada is because you might need a legal person here to liaise with the legal person there so that the rules and the laws are matched with each other. Because that's why I said, but they cover both. Because when you're expanding, you don't need the Canadian person, but you might just need your lawyer here to be able to make sure that whatever that person is telling you is making sense. Of course, they won't know the laws of that place. That's something you need to know. A Canadian lawyer cannot know the legal laws. Even if it's a Canadian lawyer that was once practicing there, they really cannot give you advice again because for liability sake, they would not do it. So you just need to make sure that you have a trusted lawyer. And if you're working with a law firm, for those who work with law firms will usually have a lawyer in the other jurisdiction, if it's a jurisdiction that they're serving, and they can refer you to that lawyer. So that way you keep everything within in-house. So that's why I said Canada and the place that you're going to, especially if you're going to the US. It's always good to work with a lawyer, but I know how expensive Canadian legal system can be here. So again, just make sure you ask for recommendations. Also, the trade office, I have a bit of a reservation, they are good because this is a public line. I don't want to say something, but they're just very interesting. So I don't know how useful they are in helping you actually really expand. But I would say that do your own research, expand to the market, and make sure you get your own contacts. So again, the final question here before I move to somebody else. So the 100K is established by your tax return. Yes, because they're going to ask you for 3 years filed taxes when you're submitting your application. I think they're going to ask you for the numbers because they can verify. They don't need you to upload it. They can verify the information themselves. So, but I'll come back to you, but let me answer somebody else. It was Nana that raised up her hands that I saw first. So Nana, please go ahead. I hope I'm pronouncing that well. Is Nana still here? Okay, so the bra girl, please go ahead.
Hi, Bukky, and thanks so much for such an enlightening session. I have about 5 questions here, and I'll just quickly run. And I'll just sorry, I'm not able to turn my camera just because
No, it's all good. It's all good.
Okay. So first, you talked about when you apply for the maximum.
Yes.
Okay. So if the scope of your project is not up to that, should you still just be very optimistic in your application, or you could just drop that to what level you can achieve just because of the reporting status, right? That's one. The second one, I was reading on the website, the CanExport website. It says there are two types of financial assistance: contribution payment and grant payments. So I think one of them is contribution, and the other one, I don't know what that is. Maybe they would approve something else, and then they just give you half of that. I don't understand what that is. If you can provide clarity on that.
So let me take it. Let's take it one after the other.
Okay.
Yeah. So for the other one, let's say now your budget, let's assume that your budget is 20,000. You're sure that this is all you need, 20,000 in and out. I would say double the money. Apply for $40,000, because the tendency for you to get the entire 20, remember, if your budget is 20,000, they're only going to give you $10,000. So if your budget is 20,000, apply for 40,000. Because then if they give you 20,000, it meets the requirement. Even if, let's say, they give you slightly higher, they'll give you at maybe around 22, 24. But if you apply for 20,000 and then they give you 10,000, now you're losing out on $5,000 that you could have gotten. Because the application is the same whether you apply for 20,000 or you apply for 40,000 or you apply for 100,000. But like I said, if you're 100% sure $20,000 is my budget, I'm not going to budge on that, I already know exactly what I'm doing, then double the amount. That's my recommendation, because most likely than not, they are not giving you the full amount.
Okay, that makes sense. So the other one is services. You've touched on products, but what of services and products that are not physical, like they are say courses or virtual services? And I know you mentioned a bit of virtually, but you were still towards products. So what happens in case of expanding services into your target market?
So Shirah is a full, like, we're service technology business. So the reason I was tailoring into products is because most people here are product people, but it's applicable. Whatever it is that I've said is applicable to services as well. I don't have a physical product. I took my immigration services and said I wanted to expand. I wanted those people in Zimbabwe and Kenya to buy from me and to come to Canada. That was my pitch. And I show them why, with research, with statistics and things like that, why there's this number of immigrants that wants to move, the number of people that Canada is looking to welcome, use that to back up why I was requesting for money.
Okay, so that answers my next question, because I wanted to ask for the nuances of establishing the strong demands in the target country. Like, is there a way that should be framed, or are you supposed to back that up with a particular research or documentation from somewhere, something, or just being able to pull that argument on your business plan is enough?
So on your business plan, if you've done your business plan well, typically, at least for my business plan, there are numbers, right? Numbers on my target audience. So there's something that I think this is more like a tech term, where it's called TAM, total addressable market, and then there's SAM, serviceable addressable market. So a total addressable market means that this is the entire universe of people that need immigration services, for instance. And then serviceable addressable market is the entire universe of people. Like, I think in my own scope, for instance, for immigration, there are about 250, and there's a data to back it up. There's where we pull that number from, right? So you have to have this high-level overview of research that needs to be done to be able to say, okay, for this particular thing, here is the research number that I can pull up to say, this is a market that needs to be served, that is underserved, and why I'm going to this market. It doesn't have to be particular to that country you're going to. It just has to be particular to your company and what you're selling.
Okay, nice. My final question. You talked about the business, the status of the business in the target market. So, because I know they said something about you having a business that is reputable in those countries. So my mind is already going to, must those businesses have like they file their annual returns in their local country already. They are popular. They, those like kind of terms, or it could even be businesses that are operational.
So are you talking about your company being reputable in the target country?
No. I mean the company, the consultant or contractors that you work with in
Okay.
countries.
Okay.
Is that, do they go to verifying their statuses, or popular or reputation and all of that? Okay.
No, just make sure that they're a legit business. They have a website that is verifiable. Because anything you're putting, just make sure, think about it from somebody else. If you want to verify somebody, the only thing they have is the internet. So they're not going to go and check, like, for instance, the CAC records for a Nigerian company, but they're going to search them up. They're not going to go into their Instagram, but do they have a website? If, for example, let's say you are assigning like almost $30,000-$40,000 to one company, they are most likely going to go and search maybe the owner up on LinkedIn. So just look at what is reasonable. If I'm assigning only $5,000 to that company, they probably will not care. But if I'm assigning $40,000, that's a huge amount of money. Who are they?
Okay.
What have they done in the past? But that's not for you to necessarily, like, that's going to be part of your documentation, but you also need to search their print online, like their, what do they call it? Their digital footprint.
Yeah.
So it's just about, really, honestly, a website that is well done, but a shabby website would indicate that, are you sure this person can actually fulfill what you said? If you're just using them as a logistics company to say, this person is just basically a holding company to help me to pay for my taxes locally, maybe my what's it called, my hotel, because it's easier for me to pay in, for example, in Naira as opposed to in dollars, right? Then that's a different conversation, because then you're going to specifically state you're not assigning stuff to them for them to consult for you. You're assigning stuff to them for them to just be your liaison. That's it.
Okay.
And then to your question about, I'm not sure about that you saw on the website. If you can send that to me separately, then I can answer that for you. Like, in terms of like the service part, the part that is grant or service, I'm not 100%.
Yeah, there are two options there, and for me, I know that one is more attractive than the other, but yeah, it looks like it's majorly contribution. So my question in that would be, like, maybe is there a cutoff for a particular amount? Maybe when you apply for a particular amount, then it falls to one, and then if you apply,
I think the minimum you can apply for is $20,000 anyways. That's the minimum. You can't go below 20,000, because the minimum they can contribute is 10,000 to you. Yeah. So if you're doing less than 20,000, then I think they just feel like it's a waste of their time to support that.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. Of course, I'll book my time.
Okay, so we had did somebody else raise their hands? And then I can go back to the chat now. So Felicia says, the question on IP is more around if it is fresh IP that will be needed for Canada and the expanded to country. I think it would be how you position it, because the CanExport, again, is for expanding. So, like, for instance, business plan covers like your business expansion, but that doesn't mean it cannot be used, and there's not a way for you to combine it with something that you will need locally in Canada. But your IP strategy must be focused on, because I just did an IP strategy. And so your IP strategy must be tied to how it's helping you to expand. If your IP strategy is just for your local Canada, it's not really your expansion plan. It's just for you as a company to operate in Canada. That's not for the CanExport. That's your regular business expense. So if you're looking for that, then I don't know what it will be called in Ontario, because I think Felicia is in Ontario. In Alberta, there's a program for tech companies or innovative companies to protect their IPs called Elevate IP. They give you up to $15,000. I got $10,000 for that, and they pay for the entire thing for you to do your IP strategy. So that's a different conversation. That's local. And your IP strategy is not really local. It's like, this is my IP strategy for Canada, this is my IP strategy for US, this is my IP strategy for Australia, and things like that. But in this case, then it can now be expanded to say, okay, I'm going to the US as well. That's why I'm getting this IP strategy. So that kind of like IP strategy works slightly differently because once you start an IP strategy, you have a period of time that you must implement that IP. Any other questions? I don't think so. I'm just going to wrap up on the presentation then, since we don't have any more questions. And so pretty much, I think we're done. You can take a screenshot of, not a screenshot, you can take a picture. This will take you to the 15 minutes call. So you can book your 15 minutes call. But like I said, before we wrap up, so one of the things that I do provide is business consulting. Again, I haven't grown my own business since 2018 as a side hustle to 2020 as a full-time. My goal, operational efficiency, building the right systems, that's where hiring the right people. I do have a team of 12 people right now, from where I started from. And 4 of those are in Canada, 8 of those are overseas. And so those are some of the things that I help businesses to kind of put together. And for Employ Now, again, this is for hiring solution for Canadian employers. We do remote hiring for remote support. Whether you're looking for an executive assistant or need somebody to help with work, we simplify that. And then, of course, grant strategy. So we do have, like I said, I have a grant writing company that I do work with. You get a 5% discount with my referral to them. So if you want, but your grant writer cannot really strategize. There's some level of understanding that your grant writer doesn't necessarily have. They have some level of, so it's important for you. So for me, when I look at grant strategy and when I do grant strategy for people, it's more looking at what do you qualify for, what do you not? It's looking at it from the lens of somebody that's experienced the grant and working backwards, working from what you want to achieve, the amount you want to get back, and making sure that you work backwards so that even when you're working with the grant writer, you can be able to, because the grant writer will just write a very great grant for you, but they will not be able to tell you, specifically like these expenses are not covered. Is when you now start filing. So that's where I come in to just do that grant strategy before you now go and get a grant writer to write your grants for you. So pretty much that's it. My email is bukky@shirah.co. I would say the best way for you to reach me is just scan the code. If you scan it, it's going to take you, or and that's it. Thank you all so much. This is just one of the testimonials of somebody that I just did business consulting for. I'm going to come to the question that I have there right away. I'm just going to wrap this up so I can close this out. This is from somebody that I worked with earlier this year, through like just, putting the business together, from him going from 2 weeks to doing one agreement to 2 days, or, because we put in like templates, we cleaned up his entire, work system in terms of online, because everything he does is online. And now we just hired an EA for him from Nigeria. And, if you're also looking like for fresh perspectives, I started a newsletter last week. And the first newsletter went out, and the next one is going to be about the difference between an EA and V, or a VA, because a virtual assistant and an executive assistant. So people are like, oh, the person is virtual, so he's a virtual assistant. No, I have nothing against virtual assistants, but for most executives, who you need is an executive assistant, and they are not much more expensive. In fact, sometimes you can get one that is cheaper, that is actually more tailored to your business than not. My final thoughts would be, winning CanExport funding is possible with the right strategy. If you qualify, please don't miss out on the opportunity. Again, you don't have to go right now. I got my grant and I said I was going to go in May. I did not go until January of 2024, even though I said I was going to go in May of 2023. So even if you're still kind of, as long as you know you're going to go, just be sure that you go, because you don't want to apply, get it, because if you get it, you've stopped somebody else from getting it. So they penalize you by not giving it to you again. Unless you really have a genuinely good reason, like health issues, then please do it. But again, thank you so much for joining, and let's make global expansion a reality. So I'm going to answer any final questions that we do have now and wrap this up. Okay, so somebody raised their hands. Did somebody raise their hands?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But I think I have a final question for you because we still have 1 minute more to go. Okay, so you did mention during your presentation that if you earn income of over 100K from the market you're trying to expand to, you are not eligible. So how do they know this, or how do you prove it in your financial statements? Or is it just a ask kind of question and you need to be honest about it, or they look at your financial statement that breaks it down?
No, your financial, when you file with CRA, there's no breakdown of region, right? There's no breakdown. Like for us now, there's no breakdown. You can't see my books now, even the actual books before we file. You can't see it and know that this money came from Nigeria, because all of our funding, even for those in Nigeria, they pay directly to us here. So unless I tell you they came from Nigeria, you are not going to know that they came from Nigeria. So that's where it's like the only way I can answer that is tax evasion, tax avoidance, for you to figure out what that looks like. So it's just for you to know, okay, honesty is like the best policy in something like this.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Bukky Wonda, for this great presentation. I'm sure you all find it very loaded with lots of information. You do have a 15-minute free session, strategic session with Bukky. So please make sure you take advantage of that. And this recording will be on YouTube so that you can rewatch, share with people that should take advantage of this. And send me an email if you need me to connect you with Bukky, or and she's on LinkedIn. Please follow her and you can get more details about this. She has done it. She's been there. She's the best person right now that I feel you should work with in order to have your export strategy done with to get this grant going for you. So thank you once again, Bukola, for another fantastic special session. I'm going to bring you again to speak to us on another topic that the women can take advantage of and can work with you in your area of expertise. Because I know a lot of these women, even though they are here in Canada, your employee now will be a great tool for them to hire, whether they are hiring somebody for their social media content or whatever. We should bring you back for your employee now tech hub. All right. So thank you so much, ladies, for joining us today. Until we bring you another special session, please have a wonderful Friday and have a great weekend. Bye for now.
Bye. Love